Today we are pleased to have in the studio with us Jeff Necciai. Jeff is the head of our software engineering team. Jeff joined the company not that long ago and quickly established credentials to lead a multidisciplined software team. He's now the head of all of our software engineering for the company, including development and support of the company's centraco platform and the TrueView 360 platform for AI development. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Adrian. It's a pleasure to be here.
Why don't we start with hearing a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, I've been, let's say, skilled enough, lucky enough, and fortunate enough to spend most of my career in technology and technology-related fields. I started actually back in the public communications industry,
really?
Creating software for, well, something that some of our audience may or may not remember, payphones.
Sure.
So creating software for the payphone industry. And one of the things that I enjoyed about that is I was able to create systems and software and kind of create value from something that didn't exist and now does.
Mm-hmm.
And that excitement really followed me through the rest of my career. So I've kind of gravitated towards those kinds of positions,
mm-hmm.
and eventually started building teams to create those kinds of solutions in the same manner. And it led me to, well, prior to DUOT, I was with a gate automation technology company.
Similar to our Alice?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Similar to Alice, and in some ways similar to the rail inspection portal as well.
Okay.
We had a little of both. Obviously, we dealt with over-the-road traffic, so we were looking at containers and trailers, but doing very much the same types of technologies, detecting damages, and of course OCR on container numbers and trailer numbers. And we serviced rail portals, so some of the clients we have now are some of the clients I have from the past as well.
Okay.
And we served maritime container terminals,
mm-hmm.
as well as distribution centers.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a little crossover between the past that I have. And I was CTO there, so I kind of came with the ability to be able to build those cross-functional teams, and very effective ones, and looking at doing that here too.
Very good. Tell me a little bit about your technical background. I know that you are a little bit of a code jockey.
Wow, where do I start? So unfortunately, it kind of shows my age a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I started quite a long time ago. I think back probably in the late 80s, dealing with the Commodores of the day and things like that, and putting things together. But it always excited me being able to code. So later on, one of my first loves of language is C,
mm-hmm.
and thereafter C++. But I've dealt with, I haven't counted them, but I've dealt with numerous languages and technology stacks throughout the years, throughout the different positions that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say it's always been exciting. So one of the aspects I like of that is to, again, to create something from nothing, mm-hmm. and to provide value from that creation. And mm-hmm. I think that's what drives me along. It's been a driver. But a favorite language, mm-hmm. it would still be C.
Still C, okay.
Still C, and but I've dealt with PHP and the modern technology stacks, and most recently, within the last 3 or so years, getting into microservices and cloud-based technologies, AWS and the like.
Sure. So being the senior software leader here, I can always remember something my dad once told me, is that he was the boss of a business, totally different business.
Sure.
And he said he had to know just enough more than his people in order to retain the respect. Is that the same in this case as being the senior lead on our software area here? Absolutely.
One of the things that I've done throughout my career, whether it's been a team lead or some other type of software management position, or even all the way up to CTO, I don't want to introduce new technology to a team or to a company, mm-hmm. Without kind of stepping through that minefield first. Mm-hmm. We have an ever-increasing pace of the introduction of new technologies and new ways to do things. So I kind of step through those in private projects first, mm-hmm. Learn as much about it as I absolutely possibly can, take classes, mm-hmm. Even get on-site instruction where necessary on some of those things, to make sure that it's going to fit our need. because I don't believe in what's called bring your own technology.
Sure.
There really, really has to be a reason.
Right.
We want to use the right tool for the job at hand.
Right.
And we don't want to do things out of convenience.
Right.
For example, I know C. I love C, and I wouldn't think of converting all of our code to C just because I love it or are familiar with it.
Right. Right.
But in walking through those paths, then I'm able to work with the teams. I'm very much a hands-on type of coaching and managing that process. I think it really, really does help to know the details, and that's where that knowledge comes in. It's very helpful.
Let's talk a little bit more about the company's products, so software products. Let's start with Centraco. Once again, you've been here about just a little over 6 months. Tell me your view on that product.
Sure, absolutely. Centraco, as soon as I saw it, I understood it right away. I understood the value, and I understood the flexibility that it offered to our suite of products that we offer to our clients. It's kind of a one-stop shop. It's built to be very modular. So if you're a rail inspection portal client, you have everything at your fingertips, right there in one interface. Likewise, if you're a distribution center client using the Alice product that we have, you're using the same interface. While that in and itself, with those two classes of customers, may not mean very much. It means a little more to us on the back end at DUOT,
right?
Because if we fix a bug, for example, or we make an enhancement, we're making it that affects those two classes of products and those two classes of customers.
Okay.
So it's one code-based, very modular approach, and I think that's a really it was really thoughtful the way it was put together, and it's again the modularity is kind of it is what you want to say is a modern piece of software.
Yes,
and the interface is absolutely outstanding too.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that well, obviously I spend a lot of time with the investment community, and one of the things I try to explain to them about DUOT is the fact that we have a common underlying architecture.
Right.
Which is a former guy who's been in the technology business. I understand how important that is.
Yeah.
And it's very efficient for the company because it means you can develop then different applications off that without having to do too many bespoke changes and so forth. So can you comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. It's of the utmost importance. I've been involved in creating products that are hardware-based products that have a certain amount of firmware on those hardware-based products. And you could think of it not as a Raspberry Pi, but a specialized use, a kind of device. And in my previous occupation, and at my previous company, we used that device in a number of different products. And by being able to go to the customer and let them know that we've designed it in such a way that the firmware on each of those products is exactly the same. It uses the same device across a wide variety of those products.
Okay.
That means one code base for the development team, one code base for the engineering team. And from a maintenance standpoint, that's very important. And from being able to get updates out in a timely fashion, quarterly updates, regularly scheduled updates, as well as hot fixes, it's extremely important to send those to all those different devices that are being able to use it.
Right.
And so I think it's an extremely important thing to have that.
Sure.
And there's a philosophical approach to that too. I have kind of a, which may be unique, maybe not unique, but I believe that every line of code that's produced by a company, that's written by a company and published by a company represents the company's commitment to that code. And there's a certain expectation to be able to support it, and you're going to live with it until you mothball it and replace it with something else. Right. So being able to have one code base as opposed to multiple unique code bases is extremely important from that standpoint.
Okay. Yeah. I would tend to agree with that. One of the things that we talk about once again with the investor base as we kind of move up from sort of base coding to the infrastructure software that underlies the architecture, which is Centraco, is the application to the customer. And one of the things is, as you know, I was around the software business for a long time myself, although obviously in a different capacity. One thing I really like about DUOT's approach is it's very customer friendly. So in other words, you have these from many other companies, these beautiful pieces of software, but it does require the customer change their business practices in order to be able to get the most out of the new software. And I've always felt, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the DUOT has taken a little bit of a different approach, which is there's this underlying architecture, it's suitable for a number of different industries, but we listen to the requirements of the customer, and then it can be customized without really having to change much underneath in order to suit that application. Am I correct?
You're absolutely correct, and the value there is absolutely it's the number one value of the software. That's really how you can grade software, and the systems like it is that we offer to our clients is in how many conditions, in how many cases can the same software be used, not necessarily by rewriting it or tailoring it for a specific software and changing underlying code, but has it been created to be scalable and flexible for for those particular client needs. And again, the same is true. For the last company I worked with, that was one of the transformations that we made. When we started, it was probably almost every customer got a different code base.
Yes, right.
And it's almost like a statement of,
which leads to its own set of challenges for us as well, because you sort of give them a little look into the toy box, and then they say, okay, now I can do the entire toy box.
Well, that's true, and the project unfortunately never ends at that point. You just keep going on and on and on. But with a repeatable, set of code and a framework and a product that is extensible and flexible and scalable, that's where you're going to gain success. You're going to be able to repeat that over and over and over again. And I think for the most extent, we are there. That's what it is that we do. That was one of the things that attracted me to Duos Tech in the first place. And, because we know that there's importance there. We have people here that realize that importance. Just a real quick follow-up to that, one of the ways that we do that in the software, and that we're improving now even, is the interface portion, right? We service through our interfaces, through our RESTful service interfaces that we're expanding upon. It allows not only the software to speak to third-party systems, but to also receive events from third-party systems, to allow those third-party systems to understand things as simple and as rudimentary as when a train arrives or when a train leaves and so forth. So it's that kind of granularity that we need to get to allow it to be very, very extensible. And everybody's business logic is a little bit different.
It's a little bit different, yes.
So, and we need to be able to accommodate that.
So speaking of business logic, now let's move up to the next chain with artificial intelligence. I know that you've made some tremendous changes, even in the short time you had, on the company's approach to AI. AI is very important for our product set. Can you discuss with the audience a little bit about what you're doing in that area? Sure.
AI is absolutely one of the most important value drivers we have across our systems, especially with the rail inspection portals, because there's so much to look at, right? There's so much value being derived from that. One of the changes that we made has to do with the TrueView 360 platform. We are redesigning that platform from the ground up. And part of the improvements that we're making to that platform is to increase the quality and the velocity of the basics of building models. That's what it is that we're doing. We want to do it, we want to do it faster, and we want to do it with much higher quality. So I don't know if the audience is familiar with how model building actually works, but basically, you're dealing with thousands of images, and we have labelers that are looking at those images. And now we have more than one labeler looking at those images to kind of identify the detections that we want to look for when the model is complete. In addition, we're applying what I call domain experts to do the QA on that labeling. Domain expert, for example, in the rail industry would be considered a carman with 40 plus years of experience. They know exactly what to look for. They know through experience everything they need to look for on a car, broken hose, missing bolt, and so forth. And they can look at these images, they can look at the labels, the way they were pointed out and annotated by the labelers, and they can do a quality and assurance check on that to make sure that it actually works. To make sure that that's actually what the model should be looking for at the end of the day. Right.
One of the things I find so interesting about that is we talk about artificial intelligence and how machines are going to be running the world, and yet It comes down to humans are still pretty good at inference and things that are related to that. And unfortunately, the machines still need us in order to be able to teach them how to do fairly basic tasks, actually.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, as a testament to that, I think we have twice as many labelers and probably 3 times as many QA folks right now involved in the QA process, or involved in the model building process and the labeling and notation process than we had a year ago. But to go back, the platform itself is actually being revitalized as well, re-engineered in a way to actually support that process.
Okay.
To support multiple labelers, for example, looking at one image, so that if they both kind of see something different, it's up to the QA person, it's up to that domain expert to kind of decide who's right and who's wrong.
Just to be clear, a labeler is someone who is teaching the machine how to recognize certain things, issues, or whatever you're looking for, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And something that a lot of folks might not know is most of us, if we've used Google and some of the other websites, we've been labelers. We've not necessarily volunteered, but kind of unaware that we were doing the labeling. Sometimes the CAPTCHAs that we're faced with that ask you to identify a car, a stop sign. I'm sure we're all familiar with those.
Sure.
Some companies are actually gathering that information and actually using those as labeling efforts. A lot of folks don't know that, but I think it's pretty interesting.
Let's talk about the team. As you know, our CEO is one of his real sticking points is that everybody works as a team within the company. And I know you're working very closely with our I'll call them hardware engineering, but our engineering department. Jeremy Grada, who's also going to be in one of these interviews. Right. Tell me about your perspective on integrating with the engineering team.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important that there are many teams. Obviously, we're all one Duos Tech. We're all one Duos is what I like to call it, and it's really one team. But within that larger team, I think when it comes to the innovation and when it comes to the continuous improvement that we're all committed to, and of course all of the products and solutions we see coming in the future. The three teams that most stick out in my mind that have to be kind of very much together pretty much all the time on any innovation that we're working on is software, IT, and engineering.
Right.
And to that extent, one of the things that we've instituted is a technology advisory board where we meet the heads of the departments meet once a week with senior leadership. And I think it's important to understand that it is important for the CEO to be there and the COO to be there and members of that leadership team, because what's really important is to make sure that everything that's being decided by those technical groups are in line with the company goals and strategies set forth for the next year, the next 2 years, and possibly the next 5 years. So it really helps keep all of those efforts in line. At a different level, all 3 teams get together on a weekly or semi-weekly basis to talk about the hot topics that are currently at hand at this time. So, for example, maybe there's a new camera being tested, or a new input-output device being tested, by Jeremy or his group there. We get all 3 teams together. We have to understand if it's applicable to the IT infrastructure that we have in place now. If not, what has to change? We have to understand how software is going to talk to it and how it's going to talk to software. So at the very beginning, before that first prototype is ordered or built, all 3 teams are discussing and laying down plans and documenting exactly what we need to go forward. Then it becomes a project with a beginning and an end. We schedule it and we move forward as a group. So it's very much like its own cross-functional team, and I think it works very, very well.
Yeah, the sort of motto that I use for that is with the 3 teams is engineering sort of build some technology, the software team make it productive, and then the IT team keep it productive, by supporting it and so forth. So that you've got this layer, and I know there's a big focus, and that's one of the reasons why we have really made some big changes in engineering, both hardware and software engineering, to a lesser extent in our IT team, but we've made those changes in order to build that teamwork and that framework.
Right. Yes, absolutely.
So Jeff, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you're a very busy person. I'd like to finish with if you could share a story with us from your background, something the audience might find interesting.
Yeah, I mentioned how I've been in technology for for most of my career, pretty much all of my career. But there was a couple times when I stepped outside of technology. One of those times that I can recall, a long time ago, I was engaged in helping a friend that was in the business of fire protection.
Okay.
And he got a job kind of outfitting a stamping plant, an automotive stamping plant, which is basically 2 football fields worth of really heavy equipment with grease pits, tunnels of grease pits that run underneath the factory. And I didn't know until I got there that we were actually doing work in the grease pits. We were
doesn't sound like a very clean environment to me.
No, not at all. So if you looked at me at the end of those days, you wouldn't have thought I was in technology, and of course for those days I wasn't. So yeah, it was. I don't know if that's the most interesting. That's what I came up with today.
Well, it makes a difference from anyway sitting in your office quietly and writing C code, right?
It does. It does.
Jeff, thanks very much. Once again, this has been another interview in a continuing series of DUOT senior executives. Today we're with Jeff Necciai, who heads up DUOT software engineering efforts. And my name is Adrian Goldfarb, Chief Financial Officer, and it's for DUOT Technologies Group, listed on NASDAQ, symbol DUOT.